Tessa, I gave everything to your brother. You're out. For a moment I thought I had misheard him. The words felt foreign, like they belonged in someone else's nightmare, not mine. I tightened my grip on my phone, feeling the sharp edge of betrayal cut through me. My father's voice was calm. Too calm. As if he weren't dismantling my entire life's work in a single breath. As if the last 20 years meant nothing. I forced myself to swallow the lump rising in my throat. The view outside my office window blurred as my mind raced through the implications. The empire we had built together, the one I had sacrificed everything for, was no longer mine. I had spent years believing I was the backbone of Mitchell Enterprises, that my father saw me as his equal, as the one who would carry on our legacy. I was wrong. Thanks for letting me know, I said, my voice disturbingly even. I could hear my father hesitate on the other end. He had expected something different. A scream, a plea, maybe even a fight, but I gave him nothing. Tessa, I know this might seem unfair, but... I hung up. The silence in my office felt suffocating. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on me, heavier than anything I had ever faced. Then, something shifted. I inhaled slowly, deliberately, steadying the fire inside me. He thinks this is over. He's wrong. Mitchell Enterprises wasn't just a business. It was my father's dream in my entire life. I had been there since the beginning, working beside him as we clawed our way up from nothing. At 19, I officially joined the company. While my father had the vision, I was the one who made it scalable. I built our investment strategies, expanded our portfolio, and pulled us back from the brink of financial collapse more times than I could count. And yet, in the past year, something had changed. My father started excluding me from key meetings. Financial reports stopped landing on my desk. Decisions were being made behind closed doors. By my brother, Liam. Liam, the golden child, the son my father had always wanted. While I spent my 20s in boardrooms and investor meetings, Liam spent his in nightclubs and luxury resorts, burning through trust fund money like it was infinite. He never cared about the company. He never earned his place in it. But somehow, my father had chosen him over me. I should have seen it coming. The missing reports. The hushed conversations between my father and his lawyers. The way Liam had suddenly become interested in the company after years of neglect. I had been too trusting. Too busy running the business to notice the ground shifting beneath me. And now, they thought they had taken everything. I stared at the mahogany desk in front of me. Fingers tapping rhythmically against the smooth surface. My mind was already calculating. Shifting through years of contracts, legal structures and contingency plans. What my father didn't realize. What Liam didn't realize was that I had never played this game blindly. I reached for the black notebook I kept in my desk drawer. Inside were the real records. The ones I had kept separate from the official books. Every major decision, every hidden liability, every backroom deal my father had made. It was all here. If he thought he could push me out and walk away unscathed, he had severely underestimated me. I had built this company with my blood, sweat and sacrifice. I knew every weak spot, every pressure point, and I wasn't going to let them win. I leaned back in my chair, staring out at the city skyline. This was where my father had made his second mistake. Assuming I would crumble. I wasn't grieving the loss. I was preparing for war. With one final glance at my phone, I stood up, adjusting the sleeves of my blazer. This wasn't over. It had only just begun. I left the office early that day. Not because I was overwhelmed. Not because I needed time to process. I left because I needed to think. The truth was, I had already seen this coming. I drove in silence, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The streets of Austin blurred past me. A city I had spent years building a name in. A city that now felt different. Colder. My father had cut me out. Liam had won. Or so they thought. I pulled into my driveway, killed the engine, and just sat there for a moment, letting the quiet settle over me. The house felt empty. Because it was empty, I had never had time to build a life outside of the company. While my friends were getting married, having kids, taking vacations. I was working 16-hour days, making sure Mitchell Enterprises didn't collapse under the weight of my father's outdated strategies. And now, I had nothing to show for it. Or at least, that's what they wanted me to believe. I walked inside, tossing my keys onto the counter and made my way to the study. The walls were lined with books on business, strategy, negotiations. The things I had dedicated my life to. But tonight, they felt useless. Instead, I grabbed the one thing that had never let me down. My notebook. I flipped it open, scanning the pages filled with years of notes. Deals my father had made. Hidden accounts. Things he never thought I'd notice. I knew my father's weaknesses. And if he had taught me anything, it was that power didn't belong to the one with the biggest empire. It belonged to the one who knew how to burn it all down. I thought back to my childhood. How my father had always preached about loyalty, about family. He had raised me on stories of grit, of perseverance, of earning your place in this world. And yet, when it came down to it, he had handed everything to Liam, the one who had done nothing to deserve it. This wasn't just about money. This was about respect. And my father had made one critical mistake. He had underestimated me. I picked up my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and found the one name I needed. Ethan Carter, my father's oldest friend, the man who had helped him secure the first round of funding when Mitchell Enterprises was just an idea on a bar napkin. Ethan was one of the few people who had always believed in me, more than my own father had. I hit call. Tessa? He answered almost immediately, his voice warm but cautious. It's been a while. I need to meet, I said, getting straight to the point. It's about my father. There was a pause. Then he sighed. I figured something was going on. Meet me at the club in an hour. I hung up and grabbed my keys. If my father had rewritten the rules, then so would I. The private club was exactly as I remembered. Filled with old money, men who had built their empires the way my father had. Ethan sat in the back, nursing a whiskey, watching me approach with the same calculating look he always had. So, he said, swirling the glass. Tell me what happened. I didn't sugarcoat it. I told him everything. The call, the betrayal, the way my father had handed Liam an empire he didn't deserve. Ethan listened, nodding occasionally, but his expression never changed. And what do you want from me? He finally asked. I leaned forward, meeting his gaze. I want to build something better. And I want to make sure my father and Liam realize exactly what they lost. Ethan studied me for a moment, then chuckled. Your father always said you had my ruthlessness. Then you know I won't lose. He nodded slowly. All right, Tessa, tell me your plan. I exhaled, the fire inside me burning brighter than ever. My father had taken everything from me. Now, I was going to take everything from him. Ethan leaned back in his chair, studying me with the same sharp gaze he had used to evaluate business deals for decades. His silence wasn't hesitation. It was calculation. I had seen this look before, back when he and my father were still partners. You know, he said, swirling the ice in his glass. Your father would call this a betrayal. I let out a dry laugh. That's funny. I thought betrayal was cutting your own daughter out of the company she built. Ethan smirked. Tasha, I folded my hands on the table, keeping my expression calm. I don't just want revenge, Ethan. I want to build something better. Something that makes Mitchell Enterprises look like an afterthought. He nodded slowly, setting his drink down. All right, then let's talk strategy. If I had learned anything from years in the business world, it was that power didn't come from owning something. It came from controlling it. And despite what my father believed, I still had control over far more than he realized. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my notes. Mitchell Enterprises has a major vulnerability right now. Expansion. The company is over-leveraged. My father and Liam have been throwing money into new acquisitions, thinking they can grow faster than the market will allow, but they don't have the infrastructure to sustain it. Ethan raised an eyebrow. And how do you know that? Because I built the infrastructure. I met his gaze. I know exactly where the cracks are. And if those cracks get a little wider, the entire thing collapses. Ethan let out a low chuckle. So you don't want to attack them head-on. You want to let them destroy themselves. Exactly. Mitchell Enterprises had spent the last year pushing aggressive investments into real estate, manufacturing, and supply chain logistics. But my father and Liam weren't visionaries. They didn't understand the industries they were buying into. They were operating on blind ambition and arrogance, thinking their name alone was enough to guarantee success. It wasn't. And what happens when Mitchell Enterprises starts to struggle? Ethan asked, a knowing smile creeping onto his face. That's when I make my move. Revenge wasn't enough. I wanted more. I wanted to prove that I wasn't just some expendable asset my father could discard. I wanted to show them that cutting me out was the worst mistake they had ever made. I needed funding. I needed resources. And most importantly, I needed the right people. I want to start my own firm, I said. Something lean, strategic, focused on acquisitions that actually make sense. Not just flashy headlines. And I want to poach the best people from Mitchell Enterprises. Ethan laughed, shaking his head. You really are your father's daughter. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I'm better. I had spent years inside Mitchell Enterprises building the best teams, training the sharpest minds. They trusted me. They didn't respect Liam. And if given the choice, I knew exactly where their loyalty would lie. Ethan leaned forward, eyes gleaming with interest. Let me guess, you already have names. I slid my phone across the table. On the screen was a list of top executives, project managers, and financial analysts. The backbone of Mitchell Enterprises. These are the people who actually keep the company running, I said. And I guarantee you half of them would walk if given the right opportunity. Ethan whistled. You don't waste time, do you? I don't have time to waste. Ethan leaned back, considering his options. All right, Tessa, I'm in. Those 3 words were all I needed. Within a week I had secured initial funding. Ethan introduced me to investors who were eager to back a competitor to Mitchell Enterprises, especially one that knew exactly how to dismantle it from the inside. The first person I called was Danielle Carter, the company's head of risk management. She had been my mentor for years, someone who had seen firsthand how much I had built. Tessa? She answered on the first ring. I heard what happened. It's absolute bullshit. I'm starting something new, I told her. I want you with me. There was a beat of silence. Then she said, tell me where to sign. One by one the pieces started moving. By the end of the week I had 4 key people. By the end of the month I had 10. And the best part? My father didn't even see it coming. They thought I would disappear. They were wrong. I sat in my new office, staring at the official incorporation papers for my new firm. Mitchell Enterprises had taken everything from me. But I had built something better. I picked up my phone and scrolled to my father's number. For a moment I considered calling him, letting him know exactly what I was about to do. But then I smiled to myself and put the phone down. He'd find out soon enough. The first domino had fallen. Over the next few weeks the momentum I had built turned into something unstoppable. More people were leaving Mitchell Enterprises. Some quietly, some with dramatic exits, but all of them with one goal in mind. To work with me. I didn't poach aggressively. I didn't have to. I knew exactly who felt undervalued, who was frustrated with Liam's incompetence and who wanted out before the company collapsed under its own weight. And the collapse was coming. I had watched my father run the company for years, always believing that loyalty and legacy mattered more than strategy and innovation. That mindset had worked when I was there to balance him out. But with Liam at the helm, it was a ticking time bomb. The first real hit to Mitchell Enterprises came in the form of a botched acquisition deal. For months the company had been in talks to acquire Harlan Tech, a mid-sized logistics company that would have expanded their control over supply chain operations. It was a high-stakes move, one I had originally spearheaded before my father cut me out. And now? Liam had taken over negotiations and screwed up royally. The headlines came first. Mitchell Enterprises fumbles key acquisition as CEO's son mismanages deal. Harlan Tech walks away. Cites, leadership concerns at Mitchell Enterprises. I read every article with quiet satisfaction. Liam had overpromised, miscalculated, and ultimately pushed Harlan Tech into a deal with another firm. A firm I had personally advised on the acquisition. A firm that was now aligned with me. It wasn't enough to destroy Mitchell Enterprises. Not yet, but it was the first public crack in their foundation. And I knew my father was watching it all unfold. A call I knew was coming came 2 days after the Harlan Tech failure. My phone buzzed as I sat in my office going over the latest expansion plans for my own firm. I glanced at the screen. Dad, I let it ring. Then, just as it was about to go to voicemail, I answered. Tessa, his voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the underlying tension. I assume you've seen the news. I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile playing at my lips. I have. A pause. Did you have something to do with this? I exhaled softly, letting the silence stretch. Dad, I said finally, you made it very clear that I was out. Why would I have anything to do with Mitchell Enterprises? He sighed, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. We need to talk. There it was, the first sign of regret. But I wasn't ready to talk, not yet. I'm busy, I said smoothly. You'll have to find another time. Before he could respond, I ended the call. And for the first time in my life, I was the one walking away from him. I wasn't the only one enjoying the show. That evening I got a text from Danielle Carter, my former mentor, and now one of my closest allies. Danielle, Liam's losing it. He called an emergency meeting today, blamed internal sabotage. People are starting to question if he knows what he's doing. I smirked. Of course Liam was panicking. He had never handled pressure well. And now, with the press scrutinizing him, with investors getting nervous, with key employees walking away, he was drowning. And I wasn't done yet. I wasn't just targeting Liam. I was targeting my father's legacy. Mitchell Enterprises wasn't just a business. It was an institution. It had been built on decades of reputation, of my father's ability to convince people that Mitchells never fail. But that was exactly what was happening. And all I had to do was let the weight of their own mistakes pull them under. So I made my next move. I called Ethan. It's time, I told him. You're sure? He asked. Liam is cracking. My father is doubting him. Investors are getting nervous. If we move now, we can take some of their biggest contracts before they even see it coming. Ethan let out a low chuckle. You really are ruthless, Tessa. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I learned from the best. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait. The next phase was simple. Destabilize Mitchell Enterprises further. Secure key contracts before they could. Wait for my father to realize exactly what he had done. I had spent years being the perfect daughter. The loyal heir. The quiet strategist behind the scenes. Not anymore. Now, I was going to watch them burn. Liam was drowning. I watched from a distance as Mitchell Enterprises, once a powerhouse, once my legacy, began to collapse under the weight of his incompetence. It was slow at first. A missed deadline here, an underperforming quarter there. But then it spiraled, and I made sure I was there to speed up the process. After the Harlan Tech deal fell through, Mitchell Enterprises lost more than just a business acquisition. They lost credibility. Investors weren't just concerned anymore. They were scared. Then came the departures. At first it was just a few executives. The ones I had personally recruited to my new firm. But soon the floodgates opened. Key managers left. The ones who actually kept the company running. Clients hesitated. Contracts that had once been guaranteed suddenly weren't renewed. Investors started calling my father directly, demanding answers. And the best part? I hadn't lifted a finger. Liam was ruining the company all on his own. The second call from my father came late at night. I was in my office, reviewing a contract for my firm's latest acquisition. One that had once been Mitchell Enterprises' biggest supplier. The irony wasn't lost on me. I let the phone ring 3 times before I answered. Dad. His voice was different this time. Not angry, not arrogant, desperate. Tessa, listen. We need to talk. In person. I leaned back in my chair, tapping my fingers against my desk. What for? A pause. Then a heavy sigh. Liam is struggling. The board is concerned. There are financial issues that need addressing. Financial issues. That was putting it lightly. The truth was Mitchell Enterprises was bleeding money. Every failed deal, every bad decision Liam made, chipped away at the foundation. And you think I can help? I asked, feigning innocence. Tessa, please. My father's voice dropped to something almost unfamiliar. I know you're angry, but you're still part of this family. You've always been the smartest one. We need you. There it was. For the first time in my life, my father was admitting what I had always known to be true. But it was too late. We met at his office the next morning. The tension in the room was suffocating. Liam was already there, sitting stiffly in the chair beside my father's desk. His face was pale, his usual cocky smirk nowhere to be found. He knew. They both knew. Tessa, my father, began. We need to restructure the company. The losses have been significant. Define significant, I said, folding my arms. Another pause. Then he slid a folder across the desk. I opened it, and there it was. Mitchell Enterprises was on the verge of bankruptcy. My father, the man who had built an empire from nothing, had let it crumble in less than a year, because he had handed everything to the wrong person. I closed the folder and met his eyes. What do you want from me? He hesitated. Then quietly, almost painfully, he said, come back. Help us fix this. I could have laughed. I could have thrown the folder back at him and walked out. But I didn't. Instead, I let the silence stretch between us, savoring the shift in power. Liam, the golden child, was silent now. No arrogance, no entitlement, just fear. And if I don't, I asked, watching my father carefully. He exhaled. Then we lose everything. I tapped my nails against the folder. This was it. The moment I had waited for. They had underestimated me. They had discarded me. And now, they were begging for my help. I'll think about it, I said smoothly, standing up. Liam's head snapped up. Wait, what? Dad, she can't just. She can do whatever she wants. My father cut in. Liam's mouth clamped shut. I turned to leave. I had already won. And the best part? They still had no idea what I was going to do next. I didn't go back to Mitchell Enterprises. I didn't return their calls. I didn't respond to their emails. I didn't even acknowledge the carefully worded letters my father sent. Each one more desperate than the last. I let them wait. I let them wonder. And while they were drowning in uncertainty, scrambling to fix the mess they had created, I made my final move. 1 month after that meeting, the news broke. Mitchell Enterprises officially files for bankruptcy amid leadership crisis. The article was brutal. It detailed everything. The failed acquisitions, the mass departures, the fractured leadership. Liam's name was plastered across every headline, the face of the company's downfall. But the part that interested me the most, the section about their assets, Mitchell Enterprises wasn't just collapsing. It was being sold for parts. And I had been waiting for this moment. I sat in a sleek modern conference room, watching as a team of lawyers and advisors finalized the paperwork in front of me. The room buzzed with quiet efficiency, a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding within Mitchell Enterprises. My lawyer slid the final contract across the table. "It's official," he said. "Your firm now owns Mitchell Enterprises' most valuable assets." And I had been waiting for this moment. I picked up the pen and signed my name. That was it. Just like that, I had taken everything my father built, without him even realizing it was happening. Liam thought he was playing a game of power. My father thought he was preserving his legacy. But the truth was, they had been playing checkers while I was playing chess. I didn't just take the company. I took the best clients. I took the most profitable divisions. I took the people who had built the business in the first place. And what was left? A hollow shell. A name with no value. A legacy that no longer belonged to them. I didn't expect my father to reach out again. But he did. I was in my office when my assistant knocked. "Ms. Mitchell," she said cautiously, "your father is here." I looked up from my desk. I hadn't seen him in weeks. "Send him in." When he walked in, I barely recognized him. He looked older, more tired, like a man who had finally realized just how much he had lost. He stood there for a moment, taking in my office. "My new company. My success. You really did it," he finally said. "I did." A long silence stretched between us. "You could have helped," he said. "You could have come back. We could have fixed it together." I leaned back in my chair. "No, Dad. You could have fixed it, but you didn't want to. You wanted Liam to be the golden child. You wanted to prove that I wasn't necessary. And now," I gestured around the room, "you finally understand what I always knew. It was never about the name. It was never about the company. It was about the people who built it." His jaw tightened. He wanted to argue, to justify, to make excuses, but he couldn't, because he knew I was right. I made a mistake. For a brief second, something flickered inside me. A piece of me, the daughter who had once idolized him, wanted to forgive. But then I remembered the way he had cast me aside. I remembered every moment I had spent proving myself, only to be told I was never enough. And so I said nothing. Finally, he nodded, a silent admission of defeat. Without another word, he turned and walked out of my office. And this time, I didn't look back. I never needed Mitchell Enterprises. I never needed my father's approval. What I needed was the freedom to build something of my own. And that's exactly what I did. Power isn't given, it's taken. And in the end, I took everything.